Exodus chapter 40 tells how Moses sets up the tabernacle. Starting at verse 16. Moses did everything just as the Lord commanded him. So the tabernacle was set up on the first day of the month in the second year. When Moses set up the tabernacle, he put the bases in place, erected the frames, inserted the crossbars, and set up the posts. Then he spread the tent over the tabernacle and put the covering over the tent as the Lord had commanded him. He took the tablets of the covenant law and placed them in the ark, attached the poles to the ark, and put the atonement cover over it. Then he brought the ark into the tabernacle and hung the shielding curtain and shielded the ark of the covenant law as the Lord commanded him. Moses placed the table in the tent of meeting on the north side of the tabernacle outside the curtain and set out the bread on it before the Lord as the Lord commanded him. He placed the lampstand in the tent of meeting opposite the table on the south side of the tabernacle and set the lamps before the Lord as the Lord commanded him. Moses placed the gold altar in the tent of meeting in front of the curtain and burned fragrant incense on it as the Lord commanded him. Then he put up the curtain at the entrance to the tabernacle. He set the altar of burnt offering near the entrance to the tabernacle, the tent of meeting, and offered on it burnt offerings and grain offerings, as the Lord commanded him. He placed the basin between the tent of meeting and the altar, and put water in it for washing. And Moses and Aaron and his sons used it to wash their hands and their feet. They washed whenever they entered the tent of meeting or approached the altar, as the Lord commanded Moses. Then Moses set up the courtyard around the tabernacle and altar, and put up the curtain at the entrance of the courtyard. And so Moses finished the work. Then the cloud covered the tent of meeting, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. Moses could not enter the tent of meeting because the cloud had settled on it, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. In all the travels of the Israelites, whenever the cloud lifted from above the tabernacle, they would set out. But if the cloud did not lift, they did not set out until the day it lifted. So the cloud of the Lord was over the tabernacle by day, and the fire was in the cloud by night, in the sights of all the Israelites during their travels.
Thank you so much for reading that so beautifully. Good morning. Let me say a big thank you. Thank you to the church here for hosting us. Thank you. Most of you heard me say this yesterday, but thank you so much for the invitation to be with you for this weekend. It's a huge privilege, and I really value such opportunities. So, this session now for just about 20 minutes, till just after 25:25, something like that. We're going to ask this question: what is a temple? Which is probably about time we got around to this question, since we spent about an hour yesterday talking about temples without really defining one. Now, you might remember that if you were here yesterday anyway. Oh, I've got a clicker, haven't I? I've put it somewhere. Sorry. Thank you very much. Right. There we go. So if you were here yesterday, you, I hope, might remember this slide, which is where we finished, and I said, here's a cliffhanger. How's this problem going to be resolved? For those who weren't here, this is a 30-second recap. So the kind of the yellow at the top represents the presence of God, and those wavy lines represent what we call chaos, which is a disordered state. And at the very beginning, when God made the heavens and the earth, there was God above and the chaos below, and God lovingly invades the chaos and pushes it aside and creates a space called the Garden of Eden, which is a place where he places the humans he has created. And God's presence fully fills that space, and the call upon humanity is to continue that work of creation by pushing the chaos further and further back as they are fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and take God's image to the ends of the earth. That is the plan, as it were. That is the call upon humanity. What actually happens is humanity invites the chaos in. And it begins in Genesis 3, and then it builds and builds and builds, until this is a representation of the world as it was by, well, name your time, really. So what have we got? We've got God still above in this kind of, please don't, it's important we don't push these metaphors to their extreme, because we will always find ourselves saying something that is not true about God. So we are always struggling. Every time we speak about God, we are struggling with the limits of human language, the limits of human concepts, and the limits of human imagination to describe what is indescribable, whether that's about God himself or about the ways that he has worked. So I'm speaking in metaphors. Metaphors the Bible gives us, they have their limits. But anyway, let's try and think within this metaphor for now, which is God above, and the earth, which has kind of been cleared. You can see the chaos has been pushed back, and yet it has been invaded, is porous to the chaos, if you like. And as a result, it is now sealed above, and there is no communication between God above and humans below. And here is the great conundrum, and this is what the temple is designed to solve, or at least to mitigate. So here now is a demonstration of what this looks like once the tabernacle or the temple comes into being. Oh, and I think actually, even as I look at that slide, which I must have looked at 100 times in preparation, I can see a mistake with it, which is that solid line at the top should continue except for that little rectangle. So the point is that little rectangle, which is a representation of the temple, is the means by which God meets humans. And so imagine, that black line continuing apart from that. So the temple is the place where God and humans can meet. And so if we compare that with the previous slide, where there is a complete impermeable layer, if you like, the temple is an enormous breakthrough in quite literal terms. To put it another way, and this I think is a metaphor that came to me as I was thinking and praying about this, and I think this is really helpful. I hope it'll be helpful for you. It's going to be a language I'm going to speak about repeatedly today and into tomorrow as well. The temple is a portal. Do you all know what I mean by that? If you watch any sci-fi or anything, I remember watching a program years ago when my girls were little called, I think it's called Primeval or something, and it was about portals opening up and dinosaurs popping into our... Some of you remember that? A portal is a kind of, in sci-fi, it's a kind of a magic door where you step through into another world or another time or something. The temple is a portal. The temple is a place where humans and God can meet, a place where humans can come into the presence of the living God. And I want us to hold this thought, because this is perhaps the single most important way that we can speak about what is going on. I've got a friend who spends really all his life thinking about this particular strand of theology, and I actually ran those slides these slides. I ran them past him to see what he thought and see whether he thought they'd be helpful and whether they were reasonably true, as it were. And I said, and I'm going to talk about the heaven being a portal. And he came back and he said, oh, yes, it's the Axis Mundi. Okay, fine. Well, we'll just talk about it being a portal, I think. Now, the temple as a portal is represented in its structure. And as I think I said in the promotional material, there are lots of temples in Scripture, more than just the physical one that Solomon built, although we will be talking about that at some point. And all of the temples have the same basic structure, which is this. I hope you can see the yellow at the top. The sunlight's bleaching it a little bit, I think, but hopefully you can see that. This is the basic structure of the temple, remembering that the basic problem that the temple is designed to mitigate is the fact that God and humans cannot come into contact with one another because humans became porous to chaos and impermeable to God. And so this is your basic structure of a temple. And at the bottom of that picture there you can see people, okay, and at the top, represented by, rather naively, by a kind of rays of a sun, is God. And in between are clouds of some sort or another. And that is your basic temple model. It's pretty simple. We call it the tripartite structure, the three-section structure of the temple. And every temple that we see in Scripture has this pattern. Let me show you. So yesterday we spent quite a long time talking about how Eden, and in fact the whole of creation, is a temple. Now, this is how the ancient peoples conceptualized the world. And this is not how we understand the world to be in scientific terms, but that doesn't matter because we're not asking scientific questions. We're asking a theological question about how God and humans relate to one another. So let me just talk you through this, if you don't mind, to see if this laser's working. Yeah, can you see the laser if I do that? Yeah, great, okay. So, let's start with in fact, this image is using horizontal lines in rather the same way that I did for the chaos. So chaos represented by kind of as ocean, as sea, on either side of some land that has been cleared. So immediately we can, I hope, see the connection with what I was trying to show you yesterday in terms of God lovingly invading chaos and pushing it aside and creating space. So here's humans, here's us on the earth. Below, not really relevant to our temple inquiry, but just for wider information, below is the underworld, the place of the dead, it's Sheol. Most of the Old Testament actually doesn't have a well-developed concept of life after death. That's a late development in Jewish thought. It is around by the time of Jesus, but it doesn't come into most of the Old Testament. So they understand that all of the dead are here. That's just for more general interest, really. But here you have a dome above. Okay, and it's actually created by a kind of sheet of water above the earth. That's the model that the writers of the script describe as the flood are using when it speaks about the floodgates of heaven opening. It's that great dome of water above that inundates the earth. And actually, incidentally, stuck on the inside of that dome of water then are the stars. We won't worry too much about the details of that. But this is called the heaven, okay? So when you look up, this is the heavens that you are seeing. But above that dome is the highest heaven, or the heaven of heavens. And that's where God is located. Okay. So can you see now that what we have here in this ancient concept of how the world is constructed is fitting that tripartite structure, with humans below, God above, and something cloudy in between. You see how that, although it looks rather more complex, essentially we have humans below, God above in the heaven of heavens, and something cloudy in between. Now, are you following me all right? So yesterday I tried to show you how Scripture demonstrates that Eden is created as a temple, and that the Old Testament writers conceptualize the whole heavens and earth as a temple. That's just a visual way of saying the same thing. But now as we start to explore what we call sacred geometry, the idea that all the temples have this same tripartite structure. Okay, so that's the first temple. And actually probably, for a long, I'm going to use I'm going to use these today. And I'm going to put them here, which I know you won't be able to wholly see, but you'll be able to perhaps. Bear with me a minute. Perhaps I should have taken these apart beforehand. So I think, that's wonderful. Thank you very much. That's great. Okay. So I think I'm going to use this one to represent the heavens and the earth. And for those who weren't here yesterday, you know the thing about Russian dolls is you keep opening them up and they keep being the same, only they get smaller as we go. Okay, so we're going to say this is the one that represents the heavens and the earth. They are all the same pattern, and we'll start that one this side. Okay. The next one we're going to see is not the tabernacle. That's going to come in a minute, but the next one is Sinai. Now, I don't know if you've ever thought of Sinai as being a temple, but let's just remind ourselves of the story here, and perhaps then we can think about the kind of the literal configuration of the people. So this moment in Israel's history takes place after Moses, under God's direction and with God's power, has brought the people out of slavery in Egypt, and he brings them really quite quickly. It feels like a long time in our Bibles because there's lots of talk along the way, but actually within a few days or a week or two, they come to Mount Sinai. And at Mount Sinai, foundational things happen for this people. And principally, God makes a covenant with them. And as part of that covenant, he blesses them with the Ten Commandments. Okay, but if you read that account, thinking about what we might call the spatiality of what's going on, then you'll probably recognize this kind of representation. So Sinai is a mountain, and God is at the top. And it says that God is at the top, and the mountain is shaking, that there is smoke whirling around, there's a sound of a trumpet blast, and there's thunder and lightning. Let me teach you a term if you don't know it already, and the term is theophany. And theophany is a word that refers to that representation of the presence of God in fire and smoke, thunder and lightning, wind, earthquake, and I always forget one, but you get the gist, okay? So what we have at the top of that mountain is a theophany. We have thunder and lightning, we have smoke, we have the earthquake, we have the earth shaking, okay? So God is at the top of that mountain. And the mountain is wreathed in smoke, and the writer of Exodus tells us that very explicitly. And the people are at the bottom. And in fact, they're not only the people at the bottom, but they're not permitted to come onto the mountain. And we'll talk a bit more about that later on this morning. But for now, let's just notice this three-part structure. People at the bottom, God at the top, and something cloudy separating the one from the other. Make sense? Great. So we've got another temple, which looks just like the previous one. It's a bit smaller, okay? So we're going to put that one there. Right. Let me just shuffle things around so I can actually move my notes. Lovely. So on the mountain, God gives Moses instructions about the construction of the tabernacle. And the tabernacle is simply a temple in a tent. It's a portable temple because this is a nomadic people at the moment. It's going to be another 40-odd years before they enter the land. So there's no point building a temple here because next week they'll be over there. So God gives Moses clear instructions about how to build the tabernacle. And as we heard so beautifully read, Moses fulfills those instructions in minute detail. And actually what we have in Exodus, I don't know if you've ever read Exodus through in a fairly short time and thought to yourself, this is a bit repetitive. I don't know if you've ever thought that. I hear a murmur that suggests people have thought that. What you have in Exodus, actually, the second half, is you have a detailed account of what Moses is to do, okay, and then you have a detailed account of what Moses actually does. And one of the ways that the biblical writer is signaling Moses' obedience is by the close match of those two things. So it's a technique worth watching, actually. When you think your Old Testament is getting repetitive, something is being signaled to you. Take that as an invitation to compare the two things that you think have been repeated and notice has something changed. Are they identical or not? Because there's interesting things happen when we ask that question. So Moses prepares the tabernacle as per God's instructions on the mountain. And it looks broadly like this. And I realize that that's not... Well, let me just talk you through it, because I want to show you that essentially it is the same structure. So, what have we got? We have... Sorry, I keep losing the laser. Okay, so what have we got? We've got an outer tent here represented by this larger rectangle. and then some inner tents here, with the most holy place being shrouded again with additional tents. I don't want to get too bogged down with the number of tents and what they were made of and things. I'm actually writing a book on the Book of Numbers at the moment, and Book of Numbers, among other things, contains detailed instructions for the dismantling and transport and then re-erection of the tabernacle. And so I've been grappling with all of these Hebrew terms, like, is this really sea cow hide? And what is that? What's a sea cow? And how are they getting sea cows in the middle of Sinai Peninsula? We won't worry about that, okay? Because we're just going to think about the geometry of the place. So what we have essentially got, and here are the candlesticks and the candlesticks and the tables, as per the reading we heard. In the most holy place is the Ark of the Covenant. We referred to it briefly yesterday. It's a small box, not much bigger than about that, with these cherubim over the top, and it's got carrying poles, so you don't have to touch it. So the Ark of the Covenant, which contains a copy of the Ten Commandments, contains some manna from what God provided the people in the desert, and contains Aaron's staff that budded. That's a different story, we won't worry too much about that. But that's what it contains, and that is stored here in the most holy place. So, thinking about our tripartite geometry, what have we got? We've got the people here at the bottom, as it were, or either outside or at most just in the outer courtyard, okay? And then we've got the most holy place, which is God's throne, because he reigns on the ark. And what have we got in between? We've got the altar of incense. So we've got cloudy stuff in between. People, God, cloudy stuff in between. Tripartite structure. Have I persuaded you? Excellent. So let's have a tabernacle. Just making sure I pace myself in terms of my dolls. I think this is going to have to be both the tabernacle and the temple. Not necessarily smaller than Sinai, but definitely smaller than the heavens and the earth. And by smaller, I don't necessarily mean geographically smaller, but in significance, if you like. Okay, so that's the tabernacle. Now, let me show you the temple, which is essentially the same structure. It's got a few more bits and pieces, but essentially it looks just the same in its most important parts. So, I mean, Solomon's temple was very grand. We're going to learn a bit more about that a bit later on this morning. But essentially, we've got some courtyards around the outside just for kind of storing things and offices and what have you, I think. But basically, you can see the same structure here. We've got people on the outside. We've got the most holy place, or the Holy of Holies here, where the ark is stored. We've actually got a kind of a graded system of different people could come different distances. But it's essentially the same structure as the tabernacle. And here, although it's not marked on this diagram, here would be the altar of incense. So once again, exactly the same structure in all that is most important. People on the outside, most holy place where God is, and the deeply inside, as it were, and in between, clouds of incense. Same structure. Sorry, let me just got myself tangled up here. Okay. So all of those temples look pretty much like this. We've got a cosmic temple, we've got Sinai, we've got the tabernacle, and we've got the temple. The problem is that, as I have described it to you, we have still got God and humans separated by clouds of something or other, haven't we? And so what each temple needs, each temple has, is one person who can pass through the cloud into the place where God himself is. And he doesn't just go for his own benefit, but he goes for the benefit of all the people who are waiting outside. So, I think that I'm going to ask you a question, actually. I'm looking at the time. I'm going to ask you a question. So who is the one who goes up through the clouds for Mount Sinai? Moses, thank you. Who's the one who goes through the incense into the tabernacle? The high priest. So Aaron and his successors. Good. Who's the one who goes through the clouds in the temple? Same again, the high priest, Aaron and his successors. Well, not Aaron by the time of the temple, but Aaron's successors. Good. I'm going to leave the question of who goes through the cosmic one with a big question mark for now. Should we call that a cliffhanger until after lunch? Okay, I'm going to pinch a few more minutes of your time if I'm all right with that. Is that okay? So what does the temple actually achieve? We've talked about the temple as a portal. We've talked about this sacred geometry which every temple possesses. But what does the temple actually achieve? And I think it achieves three key things, and although these references aren't the only places we see these things, they demonstrate it quite well. I've got two options. I can kind of quickly tell you the answer, or you can take a couple of minutes just to look them up for yourself, which was my plan, but I don't want to pinch too much of your time. What do you think, boss? I'll share the answers, that's fine. Yeah, keep things moving. Okay, fine. Three functions of the temple. So here's the first one. You shall put the mercy seat on top of the ark, and in the ark you shall put the covenant that I shall give you. There I will meet with you, and from above the mercy seat, from between the two cherubim that are on the ark of the covenant, I will deliver to you all my commands for the Israelites. So the first one is the communication of God with humans, the revelation, as it were, of God's purposes, of his will, of his intentions. This is one of the things that happens at the temple, is God speaks. Here's the second thing. Aaron shall offer fragrant incense on the altar. Once a year, Aaron shall perform the rite of atonement on its horns. Throughout your generations, he shall perform the atonement for it once a year with the blood of the atoning sin offering. It is most holy to the Lord. The temple is the place where atonement happens, where forgiveness is obtained. It is only in this portal between heaven and earth that forgiveness can be obtained. And then the third thing that the temple offers. I will consecrate the tent of meeting and the altar, Aaron also and his sons. I will consecrate to serve me as priests. I will dwell among the Israelites, and I will be their God. And they shall know that I am the Lord their God, who brought them out of the land of Egypt, that I might dwell among them. I am the Lord their God. So here's the third thing. It is the place where God dwells, and we talked about that yesterday, didn't we? The temple, really, the whole thing about the temple is it is mediating the presence of God to a sinful people. It is the portal between heaven and earth, and therefore it is the place where God dwells. So these three functions of the temple: divine instruction, or revelation if you like, atonement in order to obtain forgiveness, and the presence of the Lord. Those four letters there are the divine names, sometimes rendered as Lord in capitals in your Bibles. Oh, that's okay, good. We're almost there then. I got the impression that you quite enjoyed the spoken word piece yesterday, so I'm going to give you a shorter one now to finish off before we take a little bit of a break. Is that okay? And this is, well, hopefully you'll work out what it's about. It is time. The 10th day of the 7th month. The day when I may go into the presence. The day when I must go into the presence. I stand alone. The acrid smell of burnt fat lingers in my nostrils. Smooth pine cools my feet, and dread is clutching at my guts. The crowd is assembled, silent, expectant. I can see the scared eyes of my family upon me. They know the stories. Uzzah the Kohathite struck down for touching the ark. Nadab and Abihu consumed by the fire of the Lord for approaching him incorrectly. And I, high priest of Israel, must venture all and go into the most holy place. Am I ready? The ceremonial washing is finished. The jeweled breastplate and golden ephod are set aside. Today I wear simple linen from head to foot. I am ceremonially clean, but he will see my heart. What foolish wisdom is this that sends a sinful man to make atonement for a sinful nation? But provision has been made for this too. The first sacrifice will be a bull to atone for my own sin. The hopes of the nation pressing on me are suffocating. For 10 days, the court in heaven has been in deliberation. 10 days since the Feast of Trumpets announced its commencement, and today will come the verdict. Will there be mercy and cleansing again this year? The people fast and wait. Their only hope that I go in. My only hope that I approach in the manner he has prescribed. I hold a censer of burning coals and 2 handfuls of fine incense to burn when I enter, fragrant smoke to screen me from the glory of God and to signal to the people that I am in his presence, face to face with the Lord, one man standing in place of the people. And there will be blood. There will be so much blood. So much blood to atone for so much sin. Cover the mercy seat with blood, and maybe he will have mercy upon us for another year. The veil is ahead of me, thick and unyielding. It seals the most holy place from the rest of the temple. And through that curtain, I must go. I alone of all people on earth, and on this day alone in all the year. Will my prayers be heard? Will I be able to endure the presence? This I do know, I would rather see the glory of the Lord and be consumed in that same moment than live endless days outside the curtain. I bear the nation's sins. I will enter. It is time.